Hey everyone, welcome to the show. We're going to get started with a new project. Today's project is all about photo editing. I'll see you in the stream. So, welcome everyone to the Digital Design Show, where I take a project and do it either entirely digitally or at least a portion of it. On today's project, we're just going to be doing a bit of photo editing. Going to take a cosplayer's picture and make it a little more anime-like. So we'll clean things up and let's get things rolling. Alright, start the media source. And here we go. So, looks like I gotta shrink my screen here. Ah, the pleasures of doing things live. So, the cosplayer is wearing an outfit inspired by Sakura from Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicle, namely her cherry blossom dress, which has never been appeared in the actual anime, but does appear in the works of Clamp. And it's a beautiful dress. I've seen many people actually do this particular dress. And it's complicated in a way, but also a bit simple. What really makes it a lot of fun is all the bells on it. So if you're using real bells, people can really hear you coming. But anyway, let's get on to the photo editing. So, today, cosplayer's image is a bit small, so we're going to first resize things because it's actually the digital file is only about 2 inches by just under an inch in size. So, and we want to make this much larger. So I'm going to first resize it to an average letter paper size, which is 11 by 8.5 when you do it landscape. Or at least we'll do something a bit close to that. So once the image is sized, of course some areas are going to be a bit pixelated and such. So we'll just, of course, blur things out once I get a second layer. The sizing is now set. I gotta choose my brushes. I think I have yet to... There we go. We're zoomed in a bit better on the image. So we can actually see that it is a bit blurry. A little bit pixelated. So we'll definitely be doing some line work in this. Adding a few other details. And adding a bit of color to the background, because right now she is just surrounded by just gray. Mind you, when the picture was taken almost a decade ago, it was a very gray day. This was taken in Van Dusen Gardens in Vancouver, BC. So it was a very lucky spot to actually photograph in. Now I'm just going through my filters trying to find the right blur filter that I need. Because we need to soften a few things in order to make it less pixelated and more suiting of the new size that it's at. Eventually I chose, I think, just a common blurring filter and put it, I think I put it at about 5 pixels, maybe 10 for the blur radius. And the whole project actually just took over an hour to do, which was nice. Here I'm zooming in so I can choose the right blur radius. Want to make sure that things are not overblown. So choosing the right size, usually keeping it between 3 and 5 pixels in radius, is a good one for the realistic photos. But it'll soften a few things and give a more polished, well, a softer look in a way that's more representative in anime. Now, granted, we're trying to turn an actual photograph of a person in real life and make it more anime looking, so we're not going to change too much. But we will get some line work in or to define the shapes a bit better. And the line work is really what will set it apart. Of course, we'll add much more color to the whole thing and a bit of sparkle. I gotta make use of some of my repeating patterns in a way. Alright, so we've got the blur now in effect. Now to add a fill layer. This is going to bring in some color. So we're using a linear fill. The top will be soft pink and the bottom will be cyan color. Just to give the water a more blue effect that's right next to her. Oh, we're just choosing our colors. I start with the bottom one, which is the cyan, and then go to the top one, which is our light pink. Luckily, I've already been playing around with this, so I figured out the right combination. It's just a matter of the middle line where it actually is going to be centered. Since the breakup of the background around her is actually not really in the center of the image, it's a little bit lower down. So here I'm choosing a blending mode. I'm going with overlay, which is a really nice way to add the color without making things look a bit saturated and such. This just adds a nice soft color and makes it less gray in appearance. But of course, I don't want the actual color to be on the person itself. So I'm going to have to apply a mask in a bit and mask out my person, so there'll be a hole in the actual layer to let my real my figure cosplayer shine through in her true colors. So just put on the mask. It's going to be a white mask, so we're going to need black in our paintbrush in order to paint out the area where our cosplay area is. So here we go, got the mask in place. Now I'm going to have to zoom in order to see all the edges of our cosplayer. That way I can get the mask in a nice position. I'm also going to be using a soft brush, so there's not going to be any hard edges eventually. And of course, I think I chose, I went with the 50-point brush in the end to get that soft blending around the cosplayer, but we'll still be able to get her true colors out. And then I think after this, I did some line work in order to make it a little more defined and a little bit closer to anime looking. I chose a nice thin line for that part. First, let's get our actual brush in place. I forgot when I was playing around earlier, I had it on a splatter brush, so I use splatter in order to create like cherry blossoms, random flowers and such. But it's not really a good brush style for masking off areas. So this may take a bit of time, but patience. But the end result actually is really nice looking. So take when you're doing full editing. You want to basically enhance what's already there and improve the quality of the photo. If we're going a little more stylized, which what I'm doing today, then you'll need even more patience to do it. Here I'm realizing that my brush size is just a bit small for what I actually need. So I'm increasing the brush size just a bit. As I said, I think I've ended up with a 50 point after that. It just seemed to be the right size for this particular photograph and what I'm trying to do. I have a lot more cosplayer photographs, or especially of this particular cosplayer, that I think I want to enhance and make them a little more fun and be something to put into a book later on. Just taking my time because I want the overlay color that was placed on here to basically be erased from just my figure and keep it to the surroundings, because that's where the color really needed to be. Because if you look at anime in general, there's really not that much gray around it. There's all these subtle colors throughout. The use of gray is saved primarily for stone. Even stone might take on some of the surrounding colors, so gray is really not that used. And nor do we really want it. So here I'm probably, I was changing the brush edge, I first had it on 100% hardness, and then I moved to 25% hardness. Eventually, in the end, I went all the way down to 0. Had a completely fuzzy edge on it, which seemed to work quite a bit better for what I was trying to do. Yeah, since our character is so blurry now, we'll definitely be using some line work in order to really define some of her features. And that's where the anime look may come into play. So, I took my time. I think I might want to speed up the video. Oh, I can't. I forgot I can't do that. Once it's saved as a media file, that's it. I can't control it. I would love to. I gotta find a way to do that. And still be able to have my character present here. I may need a more powerful computer in order to do that. So we'll work with what I've got right now. I could have sworn I set the speed at a much faster rate. Oh well. I guess that just goes to show how much time and patience I put in to actually gain the masks around my character just right. Character cosplayer. I forgot. I keep intertwining cosplayer and character. And the only difference between those words is the way they're spelled out. Anyway. So, there we go. All the way down to 0% for the hardness on the brush. And looks like I'm increasing the brush size to the 50 point. Apparently I had a bit too small for the area that I was doing. It was taking way too much time. So, but it's becoming a little bit better. The color overlay is now being pulled away from the actual cosplayer. I'm just double checking edges, bringing in the color close to our cosplayer, but not overlapping the cosplayer herself. Well, it looks like I'm playing with the brush size again. Just taking my time. There we go. It's very subtle, the difference in the color. You'll see it actually a bit more on the dress, where the light color of the dress was really blown out when it came to the overlay color. And it changed it from the pinks, the reds, to a more, it had more of a purple tone to it, which wasn't true to the actual coloring of the cosplayer. So we're just bringing the mask off of, or editing the color overlay so that it doesn't fall on the cosplayer. Of course, occasionally it decides that it wants to change colors on me, which wasn't fun. I want to keep using the black. But if you uh, press and hold the stylus too long in one spot, it will revert to an eyedropper because it's wanting you to actually pick up the color, which makes it a bit annoying when you're trying to do masking. Because I just want to keep it on the black and white, because that's what works with the mask. If you go with any other color, then the mask will appear more translucent, not hard and fast. So here we're making sure I get the right color that I need, which is black, in order to get my mask to the right position. And of course this takes time in doing it. Looks like it took me quite a bit more time than I thought I did. I thought I spent most of my time on the line work. No, it looks like I spent quite a bit of the time on the actual creation of the mask. Well, it just shows how much patience I took. But it's got a great effect when it's done right. So that's something that even a simple thing like faux editing, where you really put the patience in, you can create great effects. And showing this in essentially real time, it shows how much an artist actually puts in, how much of their time into one piece, especially if they're trying to do their best. Like the outfit itself on the cosplayer, from what I remember in talking, it took 2 years, and she was working at a full-time job at the time she was making this. So it took her quite a bit of time, but hard to believe that it was made out of basically shears and curtains, including shower curtains. The actual coat itself was made out of a shower curtain, trimmed with ribbon from Christmas. She took her time in doing it. It came out quite beautifully. And I believe the event that this was worn at, it was the Japanese festival in early spring, hosted by Van Dusen Gardens, and they were having a cosplay contest for the first time. So that dress was worn and ended up winning first place, which was neat. Of course, person spent the entire day in that costume, so often got mistaken for the mascot of the festival, which was neat. back to the actual editing. I was taking my time. You can actually now start to see it, uh, especially the lower skirt, change from white back to its original light pink. And of course, making sure that everything is in the right position. Want to get a little bit close on the bottom edge there. Of course, it doesn't help when it decides that it wants to choose a different color for the masking. Alright, so I think we're just about done with the masking. This took I guess it took about half an hour to actually do the mask. So we should be getting actually pretty close. Then of course there was the line work on the actual person. I believe the line work itself took close to half an hour as well. And of course we made her eyes a little more anime-like, especially since they are so blurred in the image. We had to define them somehow. There we go. I used a lot of black lines in order to define the folds in the fabric, because there was a lot of folds there. You may not realize it until you actually start drawing over top of each one of them. But it definitely gives more of a sense of volume and how much fabric was actually used by this cosplayer in order to get that nice full skirt. I believe she had a 3-layer skirt. One layer, actually the two bottom layers were not of curtains but actually bed sheets. She managed to find 2 pink bed sheets, and then an organza sheer for the top layer, which added a bit more elegance to it. There is a subtle line when you see it over top of the other layers in the skirt. We've nearly brought it back to the actual color on cosplayer, bringing all the pink back into place. Alright, almost there. As I said, I probably took a great deal of time getting this into just the right position. I guess I could have just outlined and filled in, but it's kind of relaxing in a way too, to take the time to color in without using the fill tool. There we go. That looks a little bit better. We've got color on the actual surroundings, and that work well with the actual colors in her outfit. Now we need to define her a bit more. And that's where the line work comes into play. So I'll have to create a new layer, a pixel layer. I think I was still at this point working on the mask. So that actually did take just over half an hour to do. And this is real time, everyone. I did not speed this up actually, so it did take this long in order to get the mask just right. Alright, so we condensed that down, and now we gotta add a new layer to get the line work in place. Then after the line work, I added sparkles, and then added some cherry blossoms into the scene in order to bring the focus actually towards our cosplayer. Because right now it's kind of barren around her and doesn't really showcase her the best. So here we go. Gain the line work into place. We'll start with the crown. It'll add a bit more dimension and bring the shadows on her a bit darker as well. Because we're doing this all in black, which is what I noticed in the actual artwork from Clamp. Whereas in anime, they tend to choose like a dark brown. But when you're going with the original artwork, then they actually went with black ink. Adjust myself a bit. There we go. Of course, I gotta make sure that I'm on the right layer. Didn't want to put myself on the wrong layer and edit things incorrectly. So here we're just choosing the brush size, making sure of course, as making sure the softness of the brush is there too, but not too soft, because this is supposed to be line work. Well, there we go. Made a mistake. I was actually on white for color, so gotta erase that. We can't have white for our line work. We need it black in order to have the same feel as what was done by Clamp. Okay, so I should have the right color now. Let's switch over back to brush. Double check the size of my brush, because I noticed when I drew that white line that it was just a bit bigger than what I needed. So I think I went down to a 5 point. Not quite a, or no, I went to a 2 point for all this line work. Because we wanted it thin line work so it's not overpowering the actual character. We can make it thicker in other places by just increasing certain areas. Here I'm just outlining one of the flowers on the crown, give it a bit more dimension, and of course a bit more darkness to our shadows, because that's one thing I noticed was the shadows were quite deep. So this will make it a little more anime looking or manga looking. Probably manga if we're going off of the original artwork. And luckily I don't need to do anything about the background. Because when you actually look at anime backgrounds, they're not as defined as the actual characters. So all the black lines have been saved for the character itself. Which works in my favor. I won't want to draw every single bit in the background. That would take way too much time. Yeah, I think I spent about half an hour or so on this. So, yeah, take your time. When you're trying to convert something, it's really best to take your time. Sorry for the interruptions in the stream. Just trying to set things up for you to see. And trying to do them live while you're watching the actual footage. So, yeah, I took my time in doing the line work, and then sparkles, cherry blossoms. Alright. So, yeah, I took a lot of time, patience, held my breath for a couple of times, because I just wanted to keep my hand nice and calm during the actual process. And of course, we've got line outline her bangs. Well, she actually doesn't have any bangs, but it was sweeping quite nicely. Her hair, she kept it nice and long, so definitely the opposite of Sakura from Tsubasa. There. But her red hair actually worked well. And here we're drawing out the eyes. Later on, I will make a change because these might be appearing a bit too big for the actual face. It's not really that balanced. So we're going to later on shrink the line work on the eyes. And then, of course, paint in the irises so that they are a little more anime-like. But I played around with it. And of course, for the scleras of the eyes, I didn't use a true white. They were more gray tones. That way, when I added the highlights in, like in any of the work, it made them appear a bit more brighter, those highlights. It actually made them look like light. I think it was at this point here when I was doing the lines on the face that I realized I drew the eyes a bit too big. But I wanted to leave them there for a bit, come back and make the decision if it really was a bit too big or not. But I kept them in just for the moment until I came back from the rest of the line work. Of course, I definitely edited the size of the mouth because really didn't need the line representing the mouth to be as big as what I had originally drawn yet. And of course I did the line on the lip, or at least to represent its shadow. And of course the cheeks. But I later took those out because putting lines on the cheek really ages you. So we took those out and kept it pretty simple because we didn't want to age her. After all, I think she was in her 20s, or at least at the latest early 30s when this photograph was taken. So we definitely did not need to make her look like she was like 60. So I continued the line works around, taking my time in doing them. And of course, throughout the process, breathing very slowly in order to keep my lines as even as possible. Of course, sometimes I did make mistakes and had to go and get the eraser and erase a section of line work and try again. And adjust my viewpoint, double check everything, and zoom in a bit closer for areas that I wanted to be a bit more precise, especially when it came to the shadows by the flowers of the crown. Now, what was neat about this crown is that it was not only a crown of flowers, but it had very long ribbons come out. And at the end of each of these ribbons was a bell. So, no matter how much she bounced around, she still could be heard. Because there was bells from her headdress, there was bells on her jacket, there were bells on sections of her skirt, so she could be heard. But it made it all the more interesting. You know, when she was being quite graceful, you didn't hear the bells at all. But when she made sudden movements, yeah. So we're just continuing to add the dimensions to the flowers of the crown, and of course all the draping ribbon and such too. There was quite a bit of it. But we narrowed it down to a few strands because all that detail was not seen. So it was easy to edit out what was not needed. A simple work like this, yeah, it only took an hour or just over an hour to do, but most of it was very simple to be done. It just a lot of repetitive work essentially. And you can see now the time that it takes for an artist to actually create something. And why when you buy something directly from an artist, it does cost quite a bit because they put in a lot of effort into making those pieces. So if you're shortchanging an artist by doing it or asking for a cheaper price, then you're not really paying them for all the time that they put in, let alone the materials that went into making that art piece. And yes, even these digital works, they do take time. And that's what people gotta keep in mind, that even though it can be easily mass produced or reproduced, but that could be the same for a photograph of a painting or a digital scaling of a carving. And that's why when you see something for a digital price, the artist is actually really undervaluing their work. Which in the end makes people appreciate the art even less because they don't think that it's really worth anything if it's paid so cheaply, despite all the effort that's been going into it. Ah, looks like again my brush decided to turn into an eyedropper and I have to correct and go back to black. It happens a few times. In any case, we'll probably get the idea of what happened. Later on, I add another fill layer with a mask to put in some sparkles using one of my repeat patterns that I created that has a transparent background, so all you see are these just sparks of light, and changing its opacity or blending mode of that layer. I think I used luminosity for the sparkles. And over top of that, I edited in some cherry blossoms that I had a picture file of. So it might be good right now to actually show you the image of the complete piece. But you can actually just tell right now it took me half an hour to do just the mask around the character. Or actually, maybe about 20 minutes actually. Because I gotta remember, I had to do all those other bits like blurring of the lines, resizing the image, and of course adding in the color to our background. The line work took, I'd say, a good half an hour to do, and then 10 minutes to add in the sparkles, the cherry blossoms, before the actual image was done. So we'll bring our finished image in place. There we go. So, there you go. You can actually see the finished image. So, you can see all these little sparkles on the bushes. I used a mask so that it would appear on the bushes, the water, but not on the pathway, the character or cosplayer and the rock and such. I wanted to keep those without any sparkle. And then, of course, added in some cherry blossoms, a layer for the branch work. And since there's two of these cherry blossom branches, I first made one, then duplicate and mirrored the other one, bringing it a little bit lower down. So it kind of draws the you could say the eye right towards our cosplayer, so we're pointing towards her, and creating a circle effect too. So that is what I did for this cosplayer's image, and I think it turned out quite a bit better. Made it a little more anime-like. The line work is not visible from this distance, but when you get close up, it makes quite a big deal. And this can now be this file size can probably be put on a variety of things and not be so blown out. So there we have the, well, maybe not the entire process, but you at least got to see most of it. The parts that took the most amount of time essentially was the masking and, of course, the line work. There you need a nice steady hand. Give yourself plenty of time, especially if you're doing it as a beginner. Give yourself lots of time and patience. Be patient with yourself. There's no need to rush if you want to have really great results, especially in anything. Learn to take your time. Eventually you will pick up speed as you gain more experience. I mean, when I first started photo editing, this probably would have taken me a lot longer to do. But now I've cut it down to doing all this work in an hour. And some images, if I don't need to do a lot, may take about 10 minutes to fully correct and bring out the real essence of the image. Oh, there we go. I want to thank you all for